a young woman, seemingly in her early 20s and college age, shares her story about being raised by a truly dreadful mother. This so-called mother from hell gained full custody of both her and her sister when they were just little children. From that moment onward, their lives became a continuous struggle. As she recounts, she strongly suspects that her mother suffers from serious mental health issues. However, that is no excuse for her actions. Throughout her childhood, her mother constantly made her feel worthless. Despite receiving child support from their father, money meant for their care and education, her mother never spent a penny on them. Instead, she selfishly used it all for herself. As college approached, the situation worsened significantly. However, with the support of her father, things eventually took a turn for the better. In the end, karma found its way to her mother, delivering the justice she deserved. As you hear this story, you'll likely despise this woman, as she was nothing more than a deceitful, selfish person. Many of you may even have encountered people like her, those who take advantage of everyone around them, acting as parasites and liars. It's satisfying to know that such individuals eventually get what's coming to them. Before we begin, a disclaimer. This story is not intended to demean single mothers or those struggling with mental illness. Despite everything, I do love my mother. However, this is a story about how actions have consequences. There are no excuses for what she did. Believe me, you'll understand as you read on. For some background, my parents divorced when I was in kindergarten, no older than 6 years. My mother was granted full custody, even though she suffered from mental illness. I suspect she had borderline personality disorder and exhibited traits of a classic narcissistic parent. From the moment of the divorce, she constantly blamed my father for our financial struggles. Whenever we lacked food or necessities, she would tell us it was his fault. For instance, if there was no breakfast and we complained, as hungry children naturally do, she would snap, "It's your father's fault. Go cry to him." Right from the start, my mother's behavior was evident. She never took responsibility. How did someone like her even get full custody? Especially when, as we later learned, she had money coming in all along. I quickly learned never to complain and to go without. My childhood was spent taking care of my mother. By the time I was 8 and my sister was 10, we had already been trained to come home from school, do our homework, clean the house, and take care of ourselves. Cooking dinner? That was on us. We were responsible for all the chores while my mother did nothing. It may sound absurd, but we thought this was normal. Being hit and constantly told we were worthless was just a part of our daily lives. At this point, I doubt anyone reading this will feel sympathy for my mother's so-called mental illness. It's irrelevant. No one who behaves this way should be raising children. What makes it worse is that she had financial support, but chose to squander it. Things took an even darker turn during my senior year of high school. A few months before summer, my grandmother passed away. Shortly before that, my mother quit her job and recklessly spent the $75,000 inheritance my grandmother left her. This was in the year 2000, so that sum was substantial. Instead of securing our future, she refused to get another job, making endless excuses. "I need a break. Get off my back. I hurt my leg," and so on. Meanwhile, she was out drinking with friends and behaving like a carefree teenager. So, during my senior year, I was juggling school, a part-time job, and the responsibilities of taking care of an overgrown child who refused to work. Whenever the utilities got shut off or the fridge was empty, she would snap, "You have a job. Why can't you pay for it?" If I mentioned that my father was sending child support, she would lie, claiming it went toward my sister's tuition, which I later discovered was completely false. She would even wave my child support check around, laughing as she referred to it as Mommy's paycheck. Let me tell you, if I had been 18 at the time, I would have left and never looked back. Too many people get trapped in toxic family dynamics out of guilt. But if someone is exploiting, mistreating, and dragging you down, whether they're family or not, they don't deserve a place in your life. Many struggle to cut ties, even as adults, but sometimes it's necessary for your well-being. Fast forward to my college decision. My mother constantly complained about the costs, yet unsurprisingly, had saved nothing for my education. A private university was out of question, as I was only offered a partial scholarship. So I chose a well-regarded yet reasonably priced state university. During my freshman year, I managed to cover my tuition and living expenses. I had filed my taxes in FAFSA as soon as my W-2s arrived, allowing me to secure a decent amount in grants. However, my financial aid was almost jeopardized in my second year. Why? Because my W-2s were mailed to my home address, and my ever-supportive mother shredded them and threw them away. Thanks a lot, Mom. Real helpful. I only found out because my sister happened to be home that weekend and saw what had happened. When I confronted my mother during spring break, she lied, claiming her friend, a CPA, had them. My sister called her bluff by contacting the friend, who confirmed she had no such documents. Concerned, the friend advised us to request duplicate W-2s and have them sent home, promising that she would ensure our mother forwarded them to me. Sure, like that was going to happen. My mother was furious that we had checked with her friend and exposed her lie. However, true to her word, the friend completed my taxes and FAFSA. I offered to compensate her or at least babysit for her, but she refused, likely recognizing my mother's instability and feeling sorry for me. At this point, I realized that my mom had not been helping my sister with tuition at all, despite her claims. When my sister mentioned it to my dad, he confronted my mom, demanding to know where the child support money was going. My mom insisted that he wasn't paying enough, which was why she couldn't assist us financially. During my second year of college, my W-2s were once again mailed to my home address. And once again, my mom accidentally threw them in the trash. I had to request duplicate copies twice because she kept discarding them. As a result, I filed my tax return late, which delayed my FAFSA application, reducing the financial aid I received that year. Anytime I complained about money or the lack of food in the house, she would tell me to go complain to your father. By the summer before my third year, I was exhausted from dealing with my mom's nonsense. I was working full-time and saving as much as I could, but she refused to provide any support, even for basic necessities like food. I understand parents teaching their children responsibility through chores and financial independence, but this was something else entirely. She was simply a selfish person. She was furious that instead of paying the phone bill so she could chat with her online friends all day, I had used my hard-earned money to get a cell phone and pay for my own bill. She even told everyone that I should drop out of college because I wasn't applying myself hard enough. The irony was that I was in the honors program. She would play the victim with her friends, complaining about how difficult it was to have kids in college who ate her out of house and home, and always came to her for money, a complete lie. By the end of the summer, I had saved $1,000, but my university required a 50% upfront payment, around $10,000, before I could move into the dorms. I was blindsided, as the university had assured me all summer that everything was fine. When I found out on move-in day that I couldn't move in, I panicked and called my dad. He spoke to the school, and they gave me 24 hours to sort things out. The next morning, my dad showed up first thing with a coffee and a donut for me and reassured me that he would take care of everything. We went from office to office on campus, and he co-signed a loan for me, which he later paid off. He also covered the remainder of my tuition that the loan didn't cover. Unlike my mom, my dad was reliable. He didn't freak out or have a meltdown. He just took care of things. Looking back, I wish I had spent my summers living with him instead of my toxic mother. But despite everything, I still felt some sense of responsibility for her. After everything was settled, my dad took me out for lunch and told me the truth. My mom had never contributed to my sister's tuition either. My sister had graduated the summer before my junior year, and later confirmed that she wasn't surprised my mom had lied. My dad had co-signed a loan for her too, and eventually paid it off. Fortunately, my sister was able to get a scholarship and do a co-op to cover her last 2 years. My dad also revealed that my mom was not as financially strained as she claimed. As part of their divorce agreement, he had been paying the mortgage and property taxes on her house. Despite my sister moving out, he was still giving my mom the same $2,000 a month in child support. Even though I was living on campus most of the year, and she wasn't giving me a single dime. All this money was going to my mom, yet she never provided anything for us. Instead, she manipulated us into feeling guilty and worthless. Does anyone here still feel sorry for my mom? I certainly didn't. My tuition and room and board, after financial aid, amounted to about $6,000 per year. She easily could have helped me, but she chose not to. Instead, she used my child support to live comfortably while making me feel bad for wanting anything at all. She even got mad at me for not coming home on weekends to help clean the house I wasn't even living in. It hurt to realize that if it weren't for me and my sister, she wouldn't even have had a roof over her head after the divorce. My dad then asked if I would be okay with him taking over my college expenses instead of paying my mom child support. That sounded like a great idea to me. He even told me I could spend my breaks at his house instead of my mom's. I called my mom that day to inform her that my dad had taken care of the issue. She showed no remorse and blamed me for my financial struggles, claiming I pissed away my money all summer. I didn't argue. I just played dumb and reminded her that I had done exactly what she told me to do. Complained to my dad. A month later, my mom was furious. My dad had gone to court and had a hearing scheduled regarding their divorce agreement. He had proven that she had not been paying for my or my sister's tuition, even though that was the very reason he was obligated to pay child support. Since I was living on campus most of the year, the judge agreed that it didn't make sense for her to continue receiving payments. My dad also informed the court that he would no longer pay the mortgage on her house. If my mom wanted to keep the house, she would have to take over the payments herself, or they would sell it. I could live with him during my breaks. My mom freaked out and called me selfish. Of course she did. She was a narcissist. I calmly pointed out that my tuition alone was far more expensive than what she received in child support. Since she never helped me financially, she had no right to complain. She tried to guilt-trip me, saying she never had the chance to attend college right after high school, but I reminded her that she hadn't worked since my grandmother passed away 3 years ago. Meanwhile, I was juggling work and school. Finally, she saw she was losing control and lashed out at me. She tried to retaliate against my dad by refusing to pay the utilities, trying to make it seem like... Finally, she saw she was losing control and lashed out at me. She tried to get back at my dad by refusing to pay the utility bills, attempting to create the illusion that she was financially struggling. She then told me that the electricity and water would soon be shut off. If I wanted to come home for winter break, I would have to help her out. Meanwhile, she had moved in with her boyfriend at his condo, sponging off someone else now. What a freeloader. What a parasite. There's always some gullible guy out there that a woman like her can manipulate. No shortage of them. Unbelievable. I simply told her that I would miss her, but had decided to stay with my dad for winter break. I really hope she said that just to guilt-trip me, not because she actually believed I would miss her. She was furious and started crying, calling me selfish for not wanting to come home for Christmas. Side note, the previous Christmas, my gift was having many of my personal belongings thrown out. Why? Because she was angry at me for not coming home one weekend to help her clean. To get home, I had to take 2 buses and 2 trains, spend $20 one way, and then hope she would remember to pick me up from the train station, a short 20-minute drive for her, after I had traveled for 4 to 5 hours. I had finals, so I told her I'd help clean once I came home for winter break. Her response? She packed up all my things, threw them into boxes, and dumped them on the front lawn. Most of my belongings were ruined by the rain, and I had to throw many of them away. She's not just a piece of work. She's a piece of something else entirely. I told my mom that I would visit her once she got the utilities turned back on. Then I told my dad everything. He, my stepmom, and my half-siblings were thrilled that I'd be staying with them for winter break. He even offered me a job in his office during the break. An amazing opportunity. I couldn't understand why he had ever been with my mom in the first place. He also called my mom and reminded her that child support hadn't stopped, and since they were planning to sell the house in a few months, there was no reason for the utilities to be shut off. She was livid, but somehow she magically came up with the money to turn them back on. Imagine that. That spring, my dad officially took over my college tuition through a court order. He also made sure I got my full financial aid, since he helped me retrieve my W-2s. My mom lost her child support payments and was ordered by the judge to cooperate with selling the house and keep up with the utility bills. Her boyfriend moved in with her until the house sold, and then she relocated to another time zone. She probably moved the guy in just so he could pay the bills and support her. Here's the kicker. It was actually cheaper for my dad to pay my tuition than to continue giving her child support. To sum it up, my mom used and manipulated me, and in the end, I got my revenge by doing exactly what she had told me to do all those years, complaining to my dad. She lost a free ride, and I have no regrets. That was a satisfying win. Now, an update on what's happened since. Some of you have asked if things have gotten better. Well, that depends on what you mean. I'm much closer to my dad and stepmom now. After college, I grew even closer to them and still am to this day. I do have a relationship with my mom, but it's distant, hence the quotation marks. Honestly, I shouldn't have any relationship with her at all. My sister, and I should cut her off completely. I don't care what issues she has. She's toxic and only brings chaos into my life. Why do you think she and my dad split up? My dad, my stepmom, they're my real family. Not her, but it is what it is. It's not my responsibility to fix her or take care of her. It's incredible how family members can manipulate you into staying connected. We talk occasionally, but I've learned not to trust her. She always lets me down. Shocking, right? A few years ago, we were supposed to meet for my birthday, and she stood me up. Since then, I don't include her in any plans for my birthday or holidays. That's just how she treated us growing up. She wasn't always awful, but when she was, it was bad. Sure, I've met people who had it worse, but that doesn't excuse what she did to me. She used to justify her behavior by saying she was just trying to make me strong. Yeah, right. After college, she tried using the same petty tactics. She wanted me to move from New Jersey to Tennessee to live with her. She had moved to a different time zone during my last year of college and didn't even bother telling me or my sister, just up and left. I liked the area and told her I would consider looking for a job there and maybe staying in her guest room temporarily. Big mistake. She immediately started guilt-tripping me, so I hung up. She then called my sister, complaining that she had a daughter who refused to take care of her. My sister practically laughed in her face. She wasn't even 50, perfectly healthy, and refused to work. No way was I going to move in and be her caretaker. Good thing I came to my senses. She spent most of my adult life bouncing in and out of mental hospitals, trying to convince my sister and me that either we should live with her or she should live with us. She moved into my grandparents' old house in Philadelphia after they passed, but neglected the repairs and had to sell it for less than she thought it was worth. She bounced between relatives' homes, making excuses not to work, and eventually wore out her welcome everywhere. She ended up in a hospital, then a shelter, and now she lives in subsidized housing on taxpayers' dime. It's a nice loft-style apartment, but of course, she still complains about how tough her life is and how no one wants to take her in. Gee, I wonder why. Thanks again for support, kind messages, and upvotes. I know I didn't have a perfect childhood, but I remind myself that others have had it worse. At least I had my dad and my sister. And if nothing else, going through this made me stronger and taught me to rely on myself. That's the silver lining. But my mom, she's proven time and time again to be garbage. I wouldn't let her anywhere near my future family. If I ever get married and have kids, she will not be a part of their lives. She would only poison them the way she tried to poison me. Anyway, wild story, but at least there was justice in the end. Leeches like her always get what's coming to them. That's it for today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you ever come across a story like this, feel free to send it to me. I might cover it in a future video.